Do you know where you are? Do you know where you are?
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Mike Squires with the intro. Yeah. Ride those levels. Maybe next time I won't ruin the solo by talking over it. Just let it ride out. I'm getting a feel for it. This is the third episode with, I believe the third or fourth episode with our new intro, Mike Squires from, of course, Duff McKagan's Loaded. And welcome to the podcast. Yes, Appetite for Distortion, episode 57. Yes, and if you didn't know, the Heinz ketchup, if you have trouble getting it out, you have to hit the 57, and that's how it gets out. I don't know why that was important to share, but that was my weird and awkward segues that I usually have at every episode. Remco, who we're on the phone with, Remco, our co-host for this episode from the Netherlands. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I was just working on Mike's, on Squire, sorry. Solo. Wow, it's a very, very good intro tune.
Yeah, it's just so cool. That's something I never expected to do. All 57 episodes of talking about GNR to one day have a member of Loaded write my introduction. You know, that's just for us, you know, to enjoy. So that's pretty awesome. So again, welcome to the podcast. Coming up in just a few minutes, our guest, in addition to Remco, of course, we'll be speaking with ChipZNuff, which is going to be pretty amazing. And I know you're a big fan, Remco. That's why, I invited you on. I always put out there when we announce a guest, if you have any questions, leave them on Facebook, leave them on Twitter. Some of you inbox me, and you were inboxing me a lot. You were showing me, the album covers of his solo record, Strange Time. And you're like, oh, ask him about Steven Adler, ask him about Slash and all this. And I'm like, you know what? How about, come on, because you come on the show. Because you've inboxed me a lot when you have a great Instagram page with hopefully GNR fans are already following. So I'm like, you know what? This seems like a really knowledgeable GNR fan, so I appreciate you taking the time, because I know you had a little boo-boo with your daughter beforehand, so I'm glad she's doing okay.
Yeah, she's doing fine. Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for inviting me here, because I did inbox you a lot. I actually didn't listen from episode 1 on. I started to listen to your podcast in, I think, 2018, somewhere in January. I can't remember the first one, but it's the positive vibe and the energy that kept me listening. So it's a pleasure.
And it's a pleasure to hear that, because those are kind of like the comments. And so, I'm not making it up. Now you have a fan live and in person. Well, not in person, but saying that, you find me later on. It's like, I don't expect everyone to have listened from day one, of course. We're getting new followers, it seems like every day and every new episode, because with each guest comes like with a new spider web, a new GNR 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing. So there's always a new adventure with each episode, which is pretty amazing. But before we get into Shotgun News, because I want you to give a plug for your Instagram, because you post some pretty cool stuff, some rare stuff.
It's just my own collection of the Guns N' Roses stuff, or Guns N' Roses related stuff, or here and there a picture I took at one of the shows last year, but also years ago. And I actually, the last picture I took, last photo, was a couple of Izzy Stradlin's solo records he put out only online. But he every time he put it online, there was this. He sent out a picture or a cover photo for it to fans or Fanboard or Chop Away or Benefics forums, and I took those pictures and turned them in my own CDs, because I still like to have those hard copy ones. And I started this Instagram account just for fun, a little bit over a year ago, and it's still a lot of fun. I still post daily, and I've been a fan since my first single. In 1991, I got "Don't Cry," and and the very first moment I heard about Guns was my dad watching the movie The Deadpool, and I heard "Welcome to the Jungle" and I saw that Jim Carrey scene in it, and I was like, "Wow, this rocks! What's this?" Because I'd never hear anything like that.
That's pretty awesome. So I guess with that, I know you're going to have a lot to contribute because with your knowledge, you're going to be a part of, and this is what co-hosting is, in addition to helping me interview ChipZNuff in a few minutes, you're going to be a part of news. You're a part of my stupid sound clips, yes. So first in GNR news, I want to thank AlternativeNation.net. We are the first podcast featured on Alternative Nation in hopes of building a rock podcast network. They do some great articles about our episodes. And before we even joined up with them, they would pick us up and transcribe our episodes. So episode 56 featured Ernie C. from Body Count. Awesome episode. I really enjoyed talking to them. And, of course, Catherine Turman from Nights with Alice Cooper was the co-host then. And so the article is basically about when I asked Ernie what he felt about Axl using the N-word in 1 in a Million. And I know it's been out there for a while. Axl has given his point of view. It said it in a character, and I know that. However, as political as Axl is now, and as something as recent as the march against guns, and you would see Duff post about it, you would see Slash post about it, and I would still see fans on the generic GNR Facebook pages, saying you guys are full of shit. What about you guys are called Guns N' Roses? Well, what about that song 1 in a Million? You guys are racist. So there's still a lot of misconception out there about Axl and 1 in a Million. So AlternativeNation.net, they do me the favor of transcribing the interview, what Ernie's response was to it. And actually, I'll play a clip from it now, but that just gets it out there more. And his perspective, I think, coming from a black man means a lot more than me saying, oh, it's just Axl using the word. So this is when I asked Ernie about what his thoughts were about 1 in a Million.
I have no thoughts on that whatsoever. That didn't bother me. It didn't even raise an eyebrow. It's the person that says it with intent that raises the eyebrow.
Exactly.
Axl, I know he's not that dude. He can say whatever he wants to say. He's not that dude. We do a lot of cop killing. We're killing cops. We're not killing cops. He can say what he wants to, but he has that's not in his heart. His bodyguard was a black man for the longest. So if you're a racist, why would you have a black man protect your life, So, that doesn't bother me at all.
So if you want to hear the entire Ernie episode, if you haven't already, episode 56, and if you're lazy and if you just want to read it, it's on Alternative Nation, and they also transcribed a great story about Ernie, Duff, and a gun, which which was a funny story, but so check that out. Also part of Shotgun News, I don't know if you heard this yet, Remco, I believe it came out today. We try to keep this in real time, because it's Monday here in NYC. I don't know if it's you're 6 hours ahead in the Netherlands, but so they announced it a few hours ago. Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. They're going to be playing the Aftershock Festival in Sacramento, California in October. The headliners there are System of a Down, Deftones, Alice in Chains, Incubus, but we now know Slash is going to be out and about doing his thing after GNR is done in the summer. Have you ever seen Slash live with that band? I have yet to.
Oh yeah. I've seen them. I think it's like 3 times or so. They came to the Netherlands and Belgium. I've seen them in a tiny club, the Paradiso a club in Amsterdam, which was amazing. They rocked, and I love the band. I love their albums. They're nice ones.
Awesome. No, I can't wait. And I'm hoping to get Brett Fitz on the show. He did say yes. Thankfully, Todd Kearns had a good enough of a time to say, "Hey, you know what? You could talk to him, Brent. He's a nice young Jewish man." I don't know if those were his exact words, but I had to go through Todd to talk to Brent. I try to do the right thing, the right chain of command. So looking forward to that in the future, maybe sometime in the summer. Also, last thing in Shotgun News, again, we try to keep this in real time. So for yesterday, it would be April 8th, it was Izzy Stradlin's 56th birthday. So, happy birthday to Izzy, because I'm sure he listens to this show. But the story with that being, through tweets or Instagram or Facebook, Matt Sorum said happy birthday, Duff said happy birthday, Slash also said happy birthday. But the interesting one I thought was Steven Adler. He put on Instagram, he goes, of course, to a picture of Izzy, happy birthday to my loving, faithful rock brother. I love you, and I thank you for being a great friend. Now, he didn't emphasize faithful. Nothing was capitalized or underlined or anything, but I just thought, I don't know about you, Remco, the word faithful, I think that's a carefully chosen word, so I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. The thing I thought was Izzy had kept faith in Stephen. Obviously, they worked together. I think it was early 2000s on a song called a cover tune, "Do You Love Me?" I don't know if you did. Otherwise, I'll let you know where it is. But they did work together. They played together in Adler's Appetite, I think. Maybe we'll ask Chip about that, because I think he was in that band as well. It was a very heartwarming comment, and also the Instagram posts by Megan and Susan McKagan, of course.
Oh, I thought you said, it's funny, I know you said Megan. I thought you said Negan for a second. I was like, wait, the guy from The Walking Dead's that? No.
Oh, no.
No, I know, no, sorry. Well, actually, I didn't even watch Walking Dead. Yeah, I didn't even watch Walking Dead yesterday. I was watching WrestleMania, and I was rooting for, this is, I guess, GNR related. I was rooting for Charlotte Flair, Ric Flair's daughter, who, I mean, I don't know if you follow in WWE, but she won. And the only reason it matters, I guess, to our audience is because she's a huge Guns N' Roses fan. She has a tattoo that says a little patience, I think, on her forearm or something like that. I would love to get Charlotte Flair on the show at some point. But yeah, no, just very interesting. So I thought Faithful was interesting, and I don't know. It just kind of gives me hope that they're all still connected somehow, that we may see, the Appetite 5 on stage at some point. But it's good at least via social media. Everyone's playing nice. But Axl really doesn't tweet unless it's saying fuck Donald Trump or something like that. So or something about Taco Bell. So I don't read too much into that. Oh, and before I do forget, because I want to give you proper credit, Remco, so people can follow you. Your Instagram is REMCOGNR. That's on Instagram. See, like a great Guns N' Roses collection, daily posts. And so, yeah, that's why, in addition to, you being a huge Chip fan and helping me out with the interview, I just thought just to get another big GNR fan to add to this show overall and contribute. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
And actually, I did make Alternative Nation a bit before you, I think.
Oh,
because, last year I found this very small snippet in a guitar solo of Slash. That was a bootleg from Tokyo 1988, and the thing he played was a bit similar to the intro to Chinese Democracy. And so I taped it in my car on my phone and put it on my Instagram, and then all of a sudden I got lots of direct messages and everything. And Alternative Nation had seen it as well, and they put it online.
Yeah,
saying that. A fan. I don't remember what they actually precisely said, but something like a fan who calls himself Remco. I was like, no, that's my name.
Well, Brett's from California, so I mean, we're dumb Americans who just had no idea. Hey, I said to you off the air, I'm like, do I call you Remy? You're like, no, it's Remco. No. I'm like, I'm sorry, I never met a Remco before. You're my first.
Oh, thank you very much. Proud to be.
On that awkward note of calling you my first Remco, that does it for Shotgun News. News. And I believe it's time for Chip Remco. You ready?
I'm very, very ready.
Hello?
Brandon.
Hey, Chip.
You ready to do it, buddy?
Oh, you know it. I've been excited for this for a while.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Awesome. And Chip, just letting you know, on the phone, I invited a fan to be on, a big fan of yours. He's calling all the way from the Netherlands. His name is Remco.
No problem. I love the Netherlands. My favorite place to play.
Hey, hi, Chip.
How are you, Remco?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Well, very good. I wish I was out in your neck of the woods right now. I just love it out there.
Yeah? Why?
Oh, beautiful. Well, first of all, they're starving for rock and roll there. So it's a lot of good rock and roll fans that come out to see us. Plus, I love going out to Amsterdam. I love the Red Light District. I love all the coffee shops. Big fan. I used to be a High Times Cannabis Cup judge, so I spent quality time there in the 90s and early 2000s hanging out there and playing shows. I love playing the Milk Bag, and there's some good venues out there for bands.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there is. And I've actually seen you once at the Melkweg, but we'll get to that, I think.
Beautiful. No problem.
Yeah.
And you remember that time, Chip. That's the most impressive thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite places to play. High Times Magazine used to fly me out there, and I'd spend time for those Cannabis Cup contests they would have, and I'd hang out with Sebastian Bach and the guys from Anthrax and Sepultura. All the bands would be out there. We'd all have a good time hanging out together.
Oh, that's so cool. See, I wish I was as worldly as you, Chip. I mean, I'm from Long Island. I'm working in New York City right now. I'm in Tribeca. And I've been up and down the East Coast. I've been to Canada, if that counts. The furthest out west I've ever been is Minnesota. So I need to travel more, and I'm somewhat traveling just via this podcast, and that's why, because I've had, I think last episode was, or a couple episodes ago, was a fan from Scotland and Ireland I've had on, so I'm kind of traveling because of the love of this music. So it's not the same. I definitely can't hotbox the studio that I'm in right now. I probably would get fired, but maybe one day I'll go visit Amsterdam as well.
Well, it'd be nice for you to get out and spread your wings a little bit, because wonderful people out there, great culture in Amsterdam. You'd be real surprised how nice they are out to you. And it's a small place, so you could probably walk through Holland. It'll probably take you a couple of days to walk through the whole place. And it's just bicycles are real big out there, so you can get a bike, rent a bike, and just drive around there. But most of it's you're on foot and just walk around. It's real. Everything's in close proximity.
I might have to get a mini scooter or a rickshaw or something, because Chip, I'm actually I'm physically handicapped. Most people just think I'm walking with a pimp limp. That's been called that. But I have a neurological disability. I have a limp, and I walk with a cane. I just look cool, I guess. But
you could take a rickshaw out there. That's for sure, to walk you around there.
Nice.
Or you just go with a guy like me, and we just get a cab and just drive everywhere.
Perfect. So ChipZNuff, this is so cool that you're calling up. But you're not in Amsterdam now. You're calling from Chicago, correct?
That's correct. Chicago, Illinois, where it's nice and cold.
Well, it's cold here in New York City, and for us here in New York, April is supposed to be spring. I don't know about Chicago. I mean, I have your views of what you guys are, a windy city, and the winters are worse. I mean, is it normal this time of year for you guys to be this cold?
It's pretty normal, to be honest with you right now. It fluctuates.
All right. Well, again, I thank you for calling. What would you be doing now if we weren't talking on the phone?
I'm in the studio. I have my recording studio, and my guitar player, Tony Fennell's in the studio laying down some guitars. Nice.
So how far away? Because you're from Illinois, so you like being around your home base.
Well, it's nice to be. I have my family out here, my father, my brother, and sister. So, and I've a ton of friends out here, and I've stayed real busy. I was co-hosting a show for a while here in Chicago called the Man Cow Show on the Loop.
Oh, okay.
So So a lot of people know who we are out here, and that's probably why I stay. I still got my family on the south side of Chicago. It's nice to be close to everybody.
Okay, yeah. The Loop, which was just bought out by a Christian station, right? And everyone lost their jobs, which sucks, especially, because I'm a radio guy, and it's such a heritage station. There's a very famous picture of Axel in the Loop T-shirt. I think it was when it was the Rapid Fire days when he was with Izzy.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yep. You know the deal. I'm telling you about history you already know, but if for fans who don't know, I tweeted at Axel. I'm like, maybe you can get a GoFundMe to go buy the Loop, but he obviously did not respond. So that sucks.
Well, it's sad that 40 years is down the drain, but everybody gets the memories of the Loop. It started all up a long time ago. Some of the greatest DJs of our time were out there. Most notably Steve Dahl, and he was on that station for quite a long time. And then they had that disco demolition over at Comiskey Park, where they blew up disco records and caused a lot of dissension. People were really mad about that because it disrupted the baseball game, of course, and it obviously made headlines for Steve Dahl. But the Loop's been running for such a long time, playing. They're probably the only classic rock station here in Chicago outside of 97.1, The Drive. And when Mancow took over, the station was in 20s or 30s on the list, and they went all the way to number one. So he helped build that station back up to respectability, and all great things must end at one time or another. And it just so happens that the Loop has 40 years of experience and where people got a chance to hear their favorite bands, and now they got to go somewhere else. But there's other stations out there that are opening up. Of course, we got Sirius XM, and you got Dash Radio. There's a lot of different entities that are coming into play, and I think we're going to be fine here in Chicago.
Sure, and of course you got podcasts, just like us. That's the way the world is going. Radio is definitely changing, and that's why I've done I've been part of FM stations, classic heritage stations that have gone by the wayside, and you have to go through changes. It's a tough industry, but for someone like you who's been at it for 30 years to be a part of such a heritage station in your community, it's not just a station that gave you an outlet. I have to imagine it was kind of like family members for you a little bit.
Well, yeah, I felt very close to these guys. It was nice for them to add me onto the station, let me come in and co-host. And I met a lot of people. It helped elevate my perception. It's helped a lot of people out there realize that Enuff Z'Nuff has never stopped. Keep putting records out every couple of years, touring around the country. It's a nice outlet for all of us. And I'm going to miss the station. I think something else is going to pop open. And, one door closes and three doors open. That's the way I look at things. And I guess failure is not in my vocabulary. Perhaps it just means that get it right the next time.
Right on, and that's what we're going to get to. The fact that Enuff Z'Nuff has been doing it for 30 years continuously, more than 30 years, right? Like, when did you guys? We're going to get into, of course, the GNR stuff. You're working with Jamie Adler, but I want to find out more about, Chip, because you're such a unique individual, and there's not a lot about you online. Yes, you've done plenty of interviews, but you don't even have a Wikipedia page. You're famous enough to have a Wikipedia page.
Well, maybe some things are better left unsaid.
That's true.
No, I put the band together back in 1984. And
I was one, not to make you feel bad.
Yeah, it took us a long time. We were all young kids at the time. We were all teenagers. I graduated from Brother Rice High School on the south side of Chicago in 79. Put together Enuff Z'Nuff in 1984, and it took us about 5 years to get discovered. A guy named Doc McGee discovered the band out in Lake City, Wisconsin, and helped us out where that started the spark for Enuff Z'Nuff's career.
Right on. I'm assuming you were a Cubs fan as well, or White Sox.
I like both. I like both teams. I'm one of the rare breeds where usually if you're in New York, it's either the Mets or the Yankees.
Right.
Here in Chicago, it was Cubs and Sox. My grandfather played with the Sox in the 30s. His name was Zygmunt.
Wow.
Zygmunt Rabarski. That was my grandfather. He was one of the last ambidextrous ball players in baseball.
Wow.
And I think that's where my loyalty lies, is with the Chicago White Sox because of that. Okay. And then, of course, back in the 70s, I got a chance to try out for the White Sox. So I'm a big fan of the Southsiders. But I always root for the Cubs. I want to see them do well, and they've been terrific for the last 4 or 5 years.
Cool. Oh, I'll set everything up too, because I emailed you and you were out on tour, and you were nice enough. You got back to me like a couple weeks later. I know everyone who's out on tour is super busy. I'm the only loser desperate enough for attention to have my phone in my hand all the time. But I'm getting, not to disturb you too much, Chip, but I'm getting out of the shower and my phone rings, and I'm the kind of guy, again, I'm desperate for attention. I answer even if it's from an unknown number, and I picked it up, and it was like, "Hey, it's Chip." I don't want to impersonate you. I'm not going to insult you like that. But I was wearing a towel, and only a towel.
You'll have to speak up. I'm wearing a towel.
And you're like, "It's Chip. This is Brandon," and it was just so cool to let's do it. And since then I've just been watching so many interviews with you, and what caught me by surprise was, and you just mentioned to it, your baseball background, not just with your you said your grandfather was tried out for the Sox, right? Or
yeah,
my
grandfather played the Sox for like 3 years. He got hurt. A guy slid in the third base, and he got hurt and was never the same again. But because of his time with the White Sox, my father always pushed that. And I used to collect baseball cards when I was a kid. That's all I did is play sports. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey. I was a real jock.
Nice.
But I love music at the same time. And as maybe 12 or 13, listening to Don Kirshner's rock concert and Midnight Special and all those shows, that really tripped my trigger. And I was able to parlay that. And I found myself at about 14 or 15 wanting to play music much more. It was more important to me to write a song than throw a curveball or a slider or a fastball. But I still loved the mechanics of baseball and any sports, and what the team camaraderie. And I tried to use that when I put together Enuff Z'Nuff.
What position did you play? Because you ended up, like you said, you tried out though. Even though you were falling in love more with music, you still pursued your professional athlete career as a professional athlete. No. Yeah,
I guess a few of the major league teams are watching me. At 16 years old, I tried out for the Sox, Milwaukee Brewers, Kansas City Royals, and I had a lot to say. When I was playing baseball, like I said, I loved the camaraderie. I loved pitching. It was very important. I loved it. It was a tedious job, but I didn't have a strong enough fastball at the time. I threw a curveball, a slider, a forkball. I had a bunch of little tricks up my sleeve, but I certainly didn't have a good enough fastball. And back then, the major leaguers were looking for guys that were throwing in their 90s. My fastball's around 85 miles an hour, and I just didn't make the fourth quarter, so to speak.
Sure.
But I still took that. There was a lot of things in baseball that I took with me when I started putting together my musical career, which is the first thing that really started off for me was Enuff Z'Nuff. That was a big thing. I had other bands before that, but Enuff Z'Nuff was the first one that really made a lot of sense. So
that was so how did that come about then? So let's go there. Enuff Z'Nuff. Was it, when you were on the road, were you daydreaming about starting a band, or how did that, when did you finally quit? This baseball thing's not going to work out, but wow, this other band, we got something here.
Well, after I graduated from Brother Rice High School, I immediately moved out to Los Angeles and joined a band called D-Generation, the original D-Generation, not the one in New York.
Okay.
And it was with Peter Blass and Dick Krepp and Ray Zor, a punk rock band. We had Fleetwood Mac's management company behind us. We had a guy named Bill Norvis who was managing the band, and he worked with Joan Worley and Peter Marshall and all the guys from the Hollywood Squares. And he was the guy that actually started the band off. We moved to Los Angeles. Our first shows were in Las Vegas. We were opening for Boss Skaggs and the Grateful Dead. We had great shows, and it was a total punk rock band from Chicago, Illinois, that just uprooted and moved out to the West Coast. And we, along with the rock band, comes a lot of extracurricular activities, i.e., drugs, alcohol, and we couldn't take it to the next level. The band fell apart after a couple of years. I moved back to Chicago. And I got together with a buddy of mine named Mickey Fabus on the south side of Chicago, and we started recording out of his studio. And Donnie and I recorded maybe I would say a 45, maybe a half dozen songs. An EP would it be called back then. And we just couldn't get any action happening, and we we wanted to take a different direction. So we just decided, let's put together our own band. And that's what we did. We here in the south side of Chicago started doing demos out of Grandma and Grandpa McNulty's basement here in Blue Island, Illinois. We had a little 4-track recorder, and I played drums, I played guitar, and we only had 4 tracks, and Donnie and I would sing on the same microphone, no overdubs at all. And we recorded a demo. We did about maybe 20 songs, and we played it for our friends. And they were all blown away and said, you guys got something special here. And that gave us the confidence to go back in and start recording some more songs. And, you know, they weren't the best songs, but our influences were Beatles and Squeeze and Mott the Hoople. And, of course, Cheap Trick is obviously because a lot of the same overtones of that band. And from there, we started playing some shows, and we were opening for everybody from Cheap Trick to BTO. Any bands that would come through here in Chicago, we would just play shows opening for them. And eventually met this guy in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin named Bob Brigham. He was managing a band called Holland. And Bob says, hey, you guys got something special here, you know, bring us a demo. So we gave him a cassette tape, which cassettes were big back then. And didn't hear anything for about 6 months. And evidently him and his partner were out in Tel Aviv, and they finally listened to our record and called me back on the phone and said, hey, Chip, we've been listening to your record. You're right. You guys got some great songs, and we'd like to meet with you. So we drove out to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, had a nice meeting, and they were kind enough to give us a studio and let us record some demos out of there, and that was the catalyst for starting the spark that started Enuff Z'Nuff back in, that was around 1986, 87. And we recorded a bunch of songs out of there, all the early demos, New Thing, Fly Michelle, Baby Loves You. And Doc McGee came through Lake Geneva, Wisconsin with his band Skid Row. And Adrian Blue and the Bears were in the studio, and Jane's Addiction was mixing their record. And there was a Monster Rock came through there, actually. And we met the guys from Cinderella and Kingdom Come, and we gave them our demos and told everybody what we were doing. And everybody seemed to be really excited about the new Enuff Z'Nuff record that we were recording. It had no record deal at all until Doc McGee said, I got 3 cassettes in my car, Chip. 2 of them are Enuff Z'Nuff. I'm going to give it to my friend Derek Shulman, who's got his own imprint over at Atlantic Records called Atco Records, and let's see if he likes it. And we were very excited when we got heard back from Derek Shulman saying, hey, I like your stuff. I'm going to fly to Chicago and check your band out. And we went in the studio, and he came down to to hear a couple songs at our rehearsal spot. A place in Chicago we were rehearsing at called Dress Rehearsal with Don and Monica Graylis. They were the owners. They let us come in there for $10 an hour and record and rehearse songs. And Derek Shulman heard a couple of songs. The first song we played from, Derek broke a string, and Donnie said to Derek, hey, let me know if we blew the deal. I'll fire him right now. Talking about Derek Frigo. And we played one more song from him, and he was blown away. He loved the songs, and he goes, I think I've heard enough. And we thought, well, you know, they're gonna pass on the deal. We're gonna get a deal somewhere else. And lo and behold, they sent a facsimile the next day for $250,000 to sign Enuff Z'Nuff, and that put us in the game right there. And that was when Doc McGee was managing the band. And right there, that was the start of everything. We went back in the studio. We recorded about 30 songs. Sent Derek Shulman the 30. He picked the best 10, and that was the first Enuff Z'Nuff album. Where
was your mindset at that time? You know, to go from, again, you know, a young kid from Illinois, you know, maybe pursuing your baseball career, and did you ever fathom, you know, again, how this could happen? Okay, let's go there. How many years from when you formed that band to getting this record? How long did it take you?
It was 5 years of playing at clubs for 15 to 30 people a night, unless we were opening for, like I said earlier, a Cheap Trick or a BTO or somebody. It took a long, long time. Okay. I remember when we were doing our demos, I went to a Cheap Trick show at the Limelight, and here in Chicago, and I seen Rick Nielsen there, and I said to Rick, I said, hey, we're working on doing a record with a label. We got some label interest. We'd love you to produce us. And I gave him the cassette tape, hoping that Rick would say, yeah, this is great. I'll produce your first record. So when the record company, Derek Shulman at Atco, said, he asked us, is there anybody out there that you'd like to work with on your record? And we said, yeah, we like Rick Nielsen. And he goes, have you given him any material? I said, yeah, we gave him one of our cassette tapes. And he goes, has he gotten back yet? I said, no. He goes, well, forget him then. So Rick Nielsen we wanted him to produce that first record. Instead, Derek says, who produced the demos? And we said, well, Donnie and I did. And he goes, it's not broken. There's nothing to fix. Why don't you guys produce the record, and I'll get a guy to come in there and mix it for you. So, it was 5 years of beating ourselves up in the clubs, but we had a vision, and we knew we had some good songs. We had our own sound. We weren't a hair band. We were alternative before alternative.
Sure.
And I remember the guys in Guns N' Roses saying to me, man, if you guys would have came out a year or two earlier, you would have been massive because your sound was quite unique and it had a charming sound. But unfortunately, at that time, there was a lot of hair bands out there, and we got caught in the middle of a political shuffle between Atco and Atlantic Records. And we found ourselves behind the eight ball. And even though those first two records went gold, and back then, gold record wasn't a big deal as opposed to how it is now. If you sell 500,000 records now, you're a champion. You're back in the game. Back then, it wasn't as big because everybody was going platinum, all the big bands. And our competition was Guns N' Roses and Poison and Motley Crue and Whitesnake. And bands like Enuff Z'Nuff or Jellyfish or Dan Reed Network had a real hard time.
So then what was there, let's go back to what was your mindset as far as how successful you could be or where you wanted to go? Because even though during those 5 years, you would still open up for major acts. You would have, people from Cheap Trick and, of course, Guns N' Roses say how good you guys were. So you had positive reinforcement. So was it frustrating, or you just knew eventually it would be a matter of time?
It was just a matter of time. Obviously, there's frustration that goes along with everything. And listen, you show me a band without influences, I'll show you a guy who hasn't written one note or doesn't have a record deal. So, we were wearing our influences probably on our sleeves. And we were always told, don't talk about, the Beatles and bands like that. But, you are what you eat. And we knew eventually if we kept playing great shows and making good music that we would get discovered. And it just took time. And it was 5 years of beating ourselves up. We weren't making any money. We were playing gigs for free or for $50 a night, any gigs we could find, we were out there playing. We just wanted to play in front of as many people as possible. And it was my idea to get out there and open up for national acts because we'd steal their fans. And I guess that template seemed to work because eventually we were discovered. And because of Doc McGee, and he had great bands he was managing at the time, Motley Crue and Bon Jovi and Scorpions. This is before he had Kiss. We knew that Doc could help put us in the right direction, and he certainly did. Our first tours were great. Our first tour actually was out with Badlands, Jake Lee's group, and the late Ray Gillen. And that really helped set the tone for us.
So let's go to, when was the first time you met? Because, of course, this is a Guns N' Roses podcast, but, of course, I wanted to kind of character build the character that is ChipZNuff just a little bit. When was your first encounter with any of the members of GNR?
I guess, probably in the early days, because I go see the bands when they play out. And the A's, when they come through New York and play shows, I'd go see them. And I wouldn't go back and talk to anybody or bother anyone, although I met Duff, and he was super charming beyond belief. And I met Slash at a couple of Cheap Trick shows, and he was super sweet as well. I didn't really start bonding with those guys until probably in the early 2000s when Steven's brother, Jamie Adler, came out to a show where we were playing in Las Vegas. And I was backstage, and I was walking out to the tour bus, and Jamie was in the parking lot, and he says, "Hey, I'm Jamie Adler, Steven Adler's brother. My brother loves you." And I go, "Well, I love your brother." And he's been out of Guns N' Roses now for a while, obviously. He's probably, 12, 13 years at the time. And he says, "My brother's putting together a band called Adler's Appetite, and he wants you to play bass for him." And I said, "Hey, have him give me a call. I'd love to talk to him." And lo and behold, I met Steven. He was beyond belief loving, a huge fan of not just our band, but that whole scene. And I could tell he was missing. He still had fire in his veins, and he wanted to play shows. I could tell he was passionate about his craft. And he gave me a couple days to learn the whole Appetite for Destruction record, which was quite challenging because those Jagoffs wrote those songs when they were when they were young kids in their early 20s, and here we are at the time. We were in our 30s and early 40s, and we had to go out and learn these songs. But we did. The shows were great, and that was the start of Adler's Appetite, playing Appetite for Destruction every single night in its entirety. And the fans that come out, I'll tell you, it was packed every single night of those shows. They were definitely into the group. And Stephen put together like a mini little all-star band with members of Faster Pussycat and Quiet Riot and Enuff Z'Nuff. And it seemed to work out really well. We went around the country. We went over to Europe, went to South America. All the shows were well attended. The fans were happy, and they couldn't see Guns N' Roses at the time playing those songs because they were on hiatus. But they got a chance to see one of the iconic members of the band playing them with a bunch of guys like us. And we did the best we could. The show sounded good, and obviously it wasn't Guns N' Roses, but that flame was still lit. It was a little spark for sure there, and it helped us all go out there and not only play for the fans because they were dying for years and years to hear those songs, but like I said, to get a chance to see one of the original guys that helped create Appetite for Destruction.
What did you think about that? Because I mean, you said, how big of a fan of Guns N' Roses were you? Because that's interesting that you first kind of started working with Steven in the early 2000s. Because considering that you kind of came up in the time period, it wasn't the 80s, it wasn't the 90s, it was the 2000s. So, how big of a GNR fan were you, or were you just looking for the opportunity to work with Steven Adler?
No, I wasn't looking for the opportunity whatsoever. And obviously, I respect that band beyond belief. It was an iconic record. It's a great band. There's nothing to say bad about them. But I wasn't a huge fan at the time. Why should I lie to you? When I first got put together Enuff Z'Nuff, Guns N' Roses was our competition. So, we listened to their first record, listened to ours, and we thought they don't have anything on us. Our band is just as strong as they are. That's as crazy as I thought. But one day maybe people look back and they go, Donnie V is one of the quintessential vocalists of that era. He's a great singer, songwriter. There's no denying that. And, they had Axl and Slash, and we had Derek Frigo and Vicky Fox. Both bands I thought were stacked full of rock stars, and we both had strong songs. But David Geffen and the Geffen Records really put a lot of money behind the GNR band, and it was the same thing with the Atco Records and Atlantic Records. They pushed Enuff Z'Nuff, and they just got a couple more breaks. They got the Rolling Stones tour, and they got the Aerosmith tour, and we got the Badlands tour and the Nelson tour. So there you go. They got the big push, and we were right behind them, but just couldn't put it over. And listen, I don't downplay our success. We had tons of success there. We played in stadiums and sheds just like they did, but Guns N' Roses made an iconic record. There's no turning back on that. And maybe the guys in Guns are right about enough stuff coming out a little bit too late. But here we are now in 2018, and both bands are still going strong. Guns N' Roses is out playing huge stadiums, and 3 to 5 guys are back there. And Steven did a few shows, which was fantastic. And maybe one day him and Izzy will get back in, and they'll do a 35 years Appetite for Destruction. I'd love to see that, and so would the fans. On the other hand, Enuff Z'Nuff, we're getting ready to put our 21st record, which is called Diamond Boy.
Wow.
We're on Frontiers Records. We just got off a successful UK run, and we're getting ready to go out with Live Nations, putting together a great run for Enuff Z'Nuff, and it'll be Great White with Jack Russell, Bullet Boys, Enuff Z'Nuff, and there might be another band there too, and that comes out, and it'll be a 3-month run as well. So we're all still working. They're all healthy. That makes me happy to see. I love to see Slash and Duff back together again. The band they have is iconic. I used to play with Frank, the drummer. I've done records with him. Tony Fennell was a record producer before he joined Enuff Z'Nuff. And before that, he was also the singer from a band you guys have all heard. And he was a huge band out there. Tony, what was in the band? Ultravox. And I got to break this now, guys. And he took Midyear's place in that band. And then he put together a couple other things. He was on Atco Records. And from there, Tony was kind enough to call me to do a record out in New York with a bunch of people. And one of them was Frank from Guns N' Roses, who was, before that, he was in Psychedelic Furs. And that's how we all developed friendship out there. And from there, it's funny, Frank, I remember after he finished that record with Tony Fennell, said, man, I'm in trouble right now. My wife is pregnant. I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to get another gig. And we were sitting outside sharing a cigarette together, and Frank says, man, I found myself behind the eight ball here. I really don't know what I'm going to do. And Tony says, look, bro, you got a great disposition. You're a slamming drummer. You're going to find something real soon. You're going to be real happy. And honest to God, 3 weeks later, he got the Guns N' Roses gig.
Unbelievable. And he's out here a lot playing with his other band, Mule Kick, the
band. When Tony turned me on to Frank, he was in a band called, God, I got a brain cramp. They're called Honky Toast. And he was in the band with Richard Fortas. They both played in Honky Toast together. So they couldn't find any act. They couldn't get a spark happening, even though that record was iconic. And it just so happens, Frank got the Guns N' Roses gig first, and then he was able to bring Frank in.
That's insane. But going back to before, it's interesting how Jamie kind of got the ball rolling, and how if you looked at GNR as a, and I get it as like a competition at that time. Were you into like, hey, I would love to do something with Steven Adler? Or the fact that it was kind of going to be like a cover band? Or like, what did you think of that? Like, this is just a cool opportunity, or did you have any reservations about that?
You're very intuitive. The first thing I thought about when he brought up the Steven Adler gig was, boy, if I did something with Steven, all those Guns N' Roses fans would understand how good Enuff Z'Nuff is, and it would help elevate our perception. So yeah, I did think about that, and I wasn't going to leave Enuff Z'Nuff. But I thought, well, people hear that I'm playing with one of the guys from Guns N' Roses, they're going to it'll legitimize Enuff Z'Nuff to the Guns N' Roses fans.
Yeah, that's kind of a lot of things. Like we talk about that a lot in this podcast. It's like the branding, so you're helping, even though you're with Adler and this new band, Adler's Appetite, it's finding more about you and Enuff Z'Nuff. And that's honestly how I'm 34. I mean, I still obviously, like a lot of 80s bands. I'm aware of the Civil War. I'm aware of dinosaurs. I'm aware of things prior to me. But yep. GNR has gotten me, dragged me more into Enuff Z'Nuff. Or, our last episode speaking with Ernie C. from Body Count, there's a lot of, GNR pulled me into more of their music. So that's kind of how it works. And whatever 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, GNR Bacon works for you. Yeah, that's great.
Hang on a second. Tony Fennell just yelled at me something. What'd you say, Tony? Tony sends his love, you guys. He's over here at the studio with me right now.
What's going on, Tony?
And, he's actually taking a little break from recording in the studio to cook some chicken.
Okay. Well, I hope it smells good in there. Save me some.
Yeah, if he wasn't a great singer-guitar player.
Nice. Actually, now that because Jamie was recently in the news, he I don't know if you read, he put a pretty heartfelt post on one of the Facebook, one of the Guns N' Roses Facebook pages. I don't know if you had a chance to read that at all or no.
Sure. Bad news travels fast.
Yeah. So.
Listen. I don't want to get into a shouting match with anybody, and I don't feel like scrapping with anyone right now unless they're in my face.
Oh yeah, you don't have to. I can preface everything with whatever you want to share. You can always say pass. I'm just curious if you had thoughts on it.
No, I don't want to pass. I want to say that Jamie, I obviously he's passionate and he loves his brother, and that's a wonderful trait to carry. But sometimes you just gotta bite your lip and turn the other cheek. And he wasn't a guitar player. He wasn't a drummer. He didn't play in Guns N' Roses, so he really doesn't have a right to say anything like that in a publication. Maybe you're talking to your friends or your brothers or even fans, but to get out there and sling mud against one of the greatest bands of our generation when you weren't in the fucking band is a shortcut to thinking. And I don't agree with it, what he did. Even though I respect his passion, you just don't talk about that kind of stuff. That's how I look at it. He probably shouldn't have said anything. Let his brother fight his battles because his brother was the guy who wrote and fucking played on those iconic records. And that's anybody that was in the music business would agree with me on that.
Yeah, and I do understand it from that perspective as well. And I always try to look at it from all angles because I'm not these people. And I just looked at it like, it's like as someone who I'm the oldest of four, so I have brothers too. So like, what would you do? Like, what would I do if I felt like maybe my brother was in pain, or do you think maybe he was speaking for Steven, or assumed maybe that's what Steven, what feels and was getting it out there, or was he kind of just going rogue by saying all of this and just wants to be a part of it again? And I don't know, it's just all very weird and awkward and just wasn't necessary, especially with Steven going out on tour again. Why have the negative press around you?
Yeah, leave it alone. And that's one of the reasons why he's not back with the guys right now, because they see that and they go, fuck, look at what we did now. We let him back in. He's part of the family, even though he's not on a tour with us. He still makes money on it, still making chips off the band. Why do you need to sling money when you live in a glass house, okay? And I bet you right now, knowing Jamie, because he's not a dumb guy. He's intelligent. He's probably kicking himself in the ass saying, I shouldn't have said anything right now. I should have just left it alone, because that hurts in the long run when the guys look back at it and they go, hey, want to do another run? They're going to go, maybe not. Maybe it's not in our best interest. We've had success like this with the three of us and with the new guys in the band. Maybe if it's not broken, let's not fix it, leave it alone. And it hurts the chance for the fans to get a chance to see the great Izzy Stradlin and Jamie Adler together going out and doing Just an Appetite for Destruction tour. Imagine what that would be. The fans would love that beyond belief. It would be jam-packed every single night. You just play that record, maybe a couple songs off the Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 that Steven played on, and leave it alone. It'd be great.
Yeah.
But to me, it's another scar. It's another cut on that long history of bad blood between those cats.
And especially you knowing these guys personally and within your own band, dealing with, friction and over such a long period of time. That's why it's so impressive that you've kept the name for so long and still have success, because it is difficult. Even when it was just Axl, it's difficult to keep the ship going.
And props to Axl for keeping it going all this time when the other guys are all doing solo records and doing different bands. Duff with Loaded, a great band, where he's a lead singer in that band. Those guys kick ass. I went and seen them at the Viper Room. They were terrific.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Slash, all his solo records. So the guy, as soon as he plugs the guitar in, you don't even need singing. His guitar is iconic. As soon as he hits a note, you go, that's Slash. That's a sign of a real star, like a Jimmy Page or somebody. As soon as they play, or a Jeff Beck, immediately who it is. Not a lot of guitar players have that sound and have that playing ability. So all those guys in their own rights are superstars in my eyes. And right now, they're out there making a lot of people happy, providing a service, which is going out playing those iconic songs every single night. And they're playing them they're one of the biggest tours out there, all the bands, after all these years. And you got to give your props to Axl Rose, which is probably one of the greatest singers of our generation.
Agreed. And this actually leads to, and I can throw it over to Remco, because we were talking the other day about your solo record, Strange Time, where you had Steven on it, you had Slash on it. So Remco, do you want to take away your questions about that? Because I know you had a lot.
Oh yeah, I will. Before that, I will say something about the brother situation, because if I remember correctly, last time, right before the reunion gossip started, Slash's brother, Ash, also made a comment on Facebook about Axl, and it was pretty negative. That turned out pretty well, so let's hope that Jamie's comments will turn out well as well.
Oh, true. Yes. That's so funny. Slash's brother, Ash, it's like, can't make that up, called Axl fat, right? And then took it down. And, of course, that was eventually Slash and Axl, or, mom and dad got back together. So you never know. Hopefully Jamie didn't do too much damage. But I completely understand your sentiments, Chip, with that. So, but what about the solo record, Remco?
Yeah, I've a couple of questions, because the solo record was released somewhat a couple of years after the first release of it. Strange Time was eventually the release, but before it was already released or unreleased, but talked about.
Yeah, well, we first put that record out. First of all, I had Steven come to Chicago, and he stayed here for about a month. He was cleaning himself up, and I don't take drugs, all right? I've smoked pot like anybody else has tried. But I'm not a drug guy. I'm not an alcohol guy. I just like to play. I like to play music, and I love trim. That's it. I wrote songs, and the songs were really going to be songs for an Enuff Z'Nuff album. And Stephen came to the house here, stayed for about a month here in my little town called Blue Island, Illinois. It was really great with having him here, and I just lived in the house here. And every day I'd ask him to play some drums, and I'd get in there and I'd have sessions. I'd be producing bands, and Stephen would come in and get drum sounds. And anytime he would play drums, I just record his stuff. So that, I have albums worth of material. I bet I could write songs around all his iconic drum beats. And I started writing these songs when Stephen was a writer with me on them. He would just play the drums, play a beat that I would suggest to him, and then I would go into Pro Tools and I would start recording songs. And we recorded the whole record. And at first it was a 6-song EP, and I was going to put that out. And we took it on the road with us with Adler's Appetite, and we're selling them at the shows. And in the first week we sold about 300 copies. And the management company came to me and said, hey, we see you're selling Adler's Enough record at the shows. I said, yeah, Stephen knows all about it. And he says, well, it's going to confuse the audience with Adler's Appetite. We prefer you didn't sell the records at the shows. So that was very upsetting, but and I didn't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. So I said, okay, no problem. I won't sell any more at the shows. And then a little time passed, and I was going to put the record out. And I went to Cleopatra Records. And a guy named Brian Pereira, who's the president of the label, says, do you have any material that we could put out here? We love your band. And I said, well, I got this record. It's called Johnny Rotten Jr. It's just a solo record that I did. And I also have a record called Adler's Enough. And he says, why don't you give me both records? Let me take a listen to them. So I sent him the records, and I'm telling you, the next day he called me. He says, this is great stuff here, Chip. I really love this. It's a whole different side of what you would do at Enuff Z'Nuff. It's like a stoner rock record. Why don't we take both of those records and put it on one record? And don't call it Johnny Rotten Jr. because I already have Johnny Rotten on my label as John Lydon, P.I.L.
Okay, sure.
And I don't want any trouble with him. And I own the name Johnny Rotten Jr. By the way, that name was given to me by Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. I was at his house getting a bunch of stuff signed for an auction. And Rick, I said, Rick, I'm doing a solo record, but I don't want to call it ChipZNuff. He goes, well, you got to give it a good name. Why don't you call it Johnny Rotten Jr.? And I said, that sounds great. I'd love that. I'll use it. And he goes, 50-50. We both laughed about it. So then here I am a year later at Cleopatra Records, and he wants to put both records together on one disc and just call it ChipZNuff. And my father for years was telling me, son, if you're going to put a solo record out, use your name. Don't use a different name. People like you, and I think they'll be pleasantly surprised you singing all the songs.
Right.
So I put both records together. I let Cleopatra run with it, do all the artwork and everything, and it seemed to work out very well because they just called me last week. It's funny you brought that up, and they want me to do another solo record with them. So
cool.
The record did very well for us, and we don't play too many of the songs out live. But I know Steven's tickled pink. Some of the music has been in a few movies and soundtracks. And I'm real proud of that. And it's a nice record to have with Stephen Adler on there. Dale Basio's on the record as well for Missing Persons. And, we got that sample of Slash's solo on one of the songs. And I'm really proud of it. And I think that a lot of people were really happy with that album.
And you got to work with one of your heroes, right? Robin was on there from Cheap Trick. Wasn't he on that?
Robin Zander. I called him on the phone. I said, Robin, I'm doing a solo record. And I did a cover of All Day and All the Night by the Kinks. And he goes, Chip, that's funny that you asked me to sing on that because that's the first song that I played with Cheap Trick when I joined Cheap Trick. He goes, send me the track. So I sent him the song and out in Florida, and he sent it back to me with like 6 vocal takes. And I called him back and said, Robin, your pipes are incredible on this, bro. Thank you so much for doing it. What do I owe you? And listen, you want to get Robin Zander to sing on your record, it's going to cost you $10-20 grand to sing on a song. And Robin's exact words were, Chip, happy birthday, buddy. Didn't charge me a penny on it. I put the record out. That was a single. I got one of the guys from the Greg King band to play lead guitar on the track, a guy named Sir Ashley Scott, and did a great job on the record. And that we include that song on the album. And, yeah, anytime you get a record, you got Stephen Adler, Robin Zander, Dale Basio from Missing Persons, a Slash on there with his iconic guitar. Are you kidding me? Obviously, people are going to take notice to it. And the guys all did it, and they were happy. And it's one great thing. I'd probably never be able to do that again, to get those 4 iconic people to sing on a record with me. But the record's out there. Anybody can get it. It's on Cleopatra Records, and I'm real proud of it.
How did the Slash thing come about on that record?
Stephen played on a track called Tonight We Met and Now We're Gonna Fuck. And it was just one of those songs where you can't say those words to a woman, but you certainly can sing it in sing-song. And I begged Dale to sing on the record. She came here to Chicago as well. She spent a couple of days with me and all her kitty cats. And I talked her into it, and she didn't want to sing it, but then she did, and she was super, super happy she did. And then I just talked to Stephen. I said, I'd like to get Slash on here to blow a solo, but he's so busy. But I know I can get a sample solo. I made a bunch of stuff, a bunch of tracks of him before on that early stuff that he did with just his guitar. And I just played around in Pro Tools and added it in there, and it sounded great, and I left it alone.
That's amazing. And I know, Remco, you were pretty, taken away with the album artwork, but you didn't. You were just saying that you didn't have anything to do with the album artwork?
I had nothing to do with the album artwork. The label, it was all up to them. They said, we got an idea, and I said, go ahead and run with it, guys. And they wanted to make it real kind of 70s, real hippie, and real non-linear. There's not really a picture of me or anything on there. Just put the record out there, and kind of quirky, like the Andy Warhol painting. And I went along with it. I thought it was a great idea. I wanted the label to be involved. It's a family, and I wanted them to feel like they were a big part of it. And listen, that record's done very well for them. We're good enough to where they want to do another solo record. So I'm happy with the way it turned out, and it went in a nice direction. And you listen to those songs, it's pretty strong. It's all analog recording. Everything was done on 2-inch tape. We bashed those songs up live in the studio. Not a lot of overdubs, and that's why the record sounds so good.
Oh, that's incredible. Remco, did you have any other questions about that album? Because I know the Paul McCartney thing, right? You were going to ask?
Yeah, one of the songs, The Pain Is All on You, was written by you, Stephen Adler, and someone named Paul McCartney. So what's that about?
Well, Paul's playing the piano on it. That's Paul's piano parts that he did over at Abbey Road Studios. Oh. And it's beautiful piano playing, and I wanted to make sure he got his credit on there. All the lyrics and the melody lines and everything was pretty much written by me. Obviously, Stephen came up with the drum beat and playing drums on it. And it's only fitting that if you're playing a record with an artist and you give it those iconic performances, you should be credited as a writer on it. And without that piano part, that song it's not as strong. So Paul got his credit on it. I'm sure he's happy about it. He doesn't need the money, that's for sure. But everybody's credited on the songwriting on that, and that's the way it should go for any artist. You play on the record with somebody and you give your own original guitar parts or bass parts or drum parts on there, and it really helps the song and takes it to the next level. I feel as an artist you should be credited. The hip hop guys do it. Why shouldn't we?
You're right. That's a very good analogy. I like that. That's funny. We're gonna ask you another fan question. This is from Young Swedish Vinyl. So he's from Sweden. This guy from my GNR forum. So when you were, with Adler's Appetite, whether it was the beginning or even currently, like maybe the last few years before they had broken up, did Adler ever say to you in private, talk about the reunion, or was it all just about that band? And if you thought it would ever happen?
How about every single night? When I lived at Stephen Adler's house, all we talked about, well, first of all, every day I'd get up in the morning and it'd be cartoons on.
Nice.
American Dad and family shows and Family Guy and Simpsons. That's all he watches on TV. Nothing else at all. He loves cartoons, and we would sit and pray at nighttime about the reunion all the time. All he wanted to do is get back with his brothers. He loved Slash so much. Loved Axl. And I tell him on interviews, don't talk about it. Don't say a lot of stuff because you don't want to piss off the gang, Show them that those wounds that you've harvested for so many years have healed, and maybe you'll get a chance one day. And Guns N' Roses was playing a gig in Las Vegas. That's where Stephen was living at the time when we first got together. And Stephen says, I'm going to go see him. I said, man, it's a great idea. Go to the show, hang out, and have a good time. Maybe get a chance to see the guys and give Axl a hug and tell him how much you love him and thanks for the opportunities that he's provided for you through your life. And he went to the show that night, and all the fans were coming up to him and stopping him and getting autographs and pictures. And Del, Axel's guy, seen it and came out there and says, "Hey, Steven, you're not making Axel comfortable. Maybe it's better if you just go home, and we'll see you later on." So Steven left the show, did not watch the show, and went home, and he was crying. He was really upset. But not mad, just upset because he felt here's a missed opportunity for him to get together with his guys. And as he's he put the keys in the front door, and he's opening the door to go in the back of his house. The phone rang, and it was Del. And Del says, "I just talked to Axel. Please come back. We want to spend some time with you." And Steven turned around and went back to the venue. That night they went out. They hung out at the bowling alley, had a couple of cocktails, threw some bowling balls, had a great time. And that was the catalyst for them guys to heal and for Steven to maybe one day be back in the fold one day, playing some shows with them. And lo and behold, 6 years later or 5 years later, he got the telephone call from Slash saying, "Hey, bro, we're playing out in Cincinnati. We want to fly you out and come up and play a couple songs."
What was it all these years? Was it just his battle with sobriety? Was it something on Axel's end, something that wasn't said that may not? Again, I appreciate all your honesty with this. So you can always say pass. We can't talk about this. So I just want to say that again. But what do you think was the crux of it all? Because everyone who knows Steven, including you, and hopefully one day I'll have the pleasure of, whether meeting him in person or speaking to him on the phone, says he's the sweetest, nicest guy. And I understand addiction as well. I'm kind of like you. I'm not I haven't drank in 2.5 years. I've done my fair share of pot, but nothing hard. But I understand the disease of addiction, and how hard that can be, even though you have the best of intentions when you're fighting it, maybe how hard it is for others to deal with it. So there's so many variables there. So in your opinion, what do you think was preventing this for so long, and maybe still is preventing it?
As my grandfather would say years ago, "Son, it takes time for all wounds to heal." And there was a lot of water underneath the bridge. I think that when he went out that night to hang out with Axel, it was a good thing. Del's always been a wonderful guy. Steven loves the whole camp. He loves Fernando, the manager. He really likes the whole team. He loves the whole legacy, and he respects it. But he's very opinionated. He said some things in interviews because he was frustrated, and it probably got back to the camp and it ruffled a little bit of their peacock feathers. But after a while, the wounds healed, and it was only fitting to get Steven to come on out there and see how it would work doing a couple songs. And he did the Cincinnati gig, and it was great. And he called me that night, and he says, "Yeah, we played the gig, Chippy. It was so fantastic. I just loved it." and Slash just asked me to get on his bus and go to the next gig with him to Nashville or wherever it was. And I said, "Well, what are you doing right now?" He goes, I'm smoking pot." I go, "Well, put the fucking pot out right now, okay? So don't get anybody mad at you. Go to the next city, play the show, have a good time, and don't bother anybody. Just play the shows and keep out of the way." And I think he did. I wasn't there for the show, but I heard it was terrific, well attended. Before that, they played 2 shows here at Soldier Field, and that's 65,000 people. And most bands, if you're lucky, you play there once in your whole lifetime. They did 2 nights in a row. I seen Pink Floyd there on the Pigs tour, and they played 1 night. So Guns N' Roses came, and they played 2 nights completely sold out at Soldier Field. That was a good starting point for them. And those 2 shows that Steven did with them, I thought he left an indelible mark, and they were happy. But he wanted to play more than 2 songs, and he stood on the side of the stage watching Frank play those songs. And Frank told him, "Bro, if they tell me, you can come up and do as many songs off Appetite as you want to do. But, this way I was told you're going to play 2 songs, and that's it. And, maybe when you work your way up, if these shows work out well, maybe it'll increase to 3 or 4 songs a set." But Steven just didn't have the patience. When he went to South America to play with Guns N' Roses, he played 1 or 2 songs, and it just wasn't enough. He was frustrated. Flying all that way there to just play 2 songs was not enough for him. And I think that he cleansed his soul. He discovered serendipity when I was out with Guns N' Roses, a moment of clarity. And he says, "I got a chance to play a couple songs with my guys again and hang out with the team. And if they want me for more songs, I'm willing to do that. But just 2 is not enough. No pun intended."
Yeah, a couple of things in there. I mentioned, and I know you've mentioned pot before, and you have that one of my favorite quotes ever: "You've smoked more pot than Pablo Escobar." And pot, it could be a big deal and not a big deal, depending upon, because that famous, also a famous line from Half Baked with Bob Saget.
Marijuana is not a drug. I used to suck dick for coke. I seen him.
I don't know if you ever saw that Dave Chappelle movie with Bob Saget.
Of course.
But good. Otherwise, that just would have sounded really weird out of context. Then, for someone like him who has struggled, and there were rumors that we found out because I interviewed Alan Niven that Izzy was at a sound check, but something went wrong. And there, of course, the way the GNR universe is, they speculate maybe, is it Steven's fault? Is it something with the money? They're always making all these accusations. And I mean, I guess that's what fans do, whether it's in music or sports. Everyone ends up being a Monday morning quarterback.
Well, there's some things I can talk about with Guns N' Roses where I don't feel I'm out of line. Like I say, I respect the legacy of those of all the guys individually. And some things I probably are off limits, and I won't talk about them. But obviously, it had to do with probably finances because, they're making a Brinks truck full of money on there and everybody wants to get paid fairly. But it's speculation right there, and I'm not in the band. However, I really believe that one day those guys could all get together and do this one more time. And I don't want to do anything that's going to deter from that. I'm hoping, just like the rest of the fans, the millions of fans out there, that one day they'll all be able to get on the same page and go out and do a run together, whether it's a short North American run or going over to Europe and get a chance to play those iconic songs from Appetite for Destruction and maybe some stuff off Lies and a few off Use Your Illusion. And I think the fans will be blown away by something like that. But that's down the line right now. Guns N' Roses back out. I've been out with Dizzy, and I don't ask him any questions about Guns N' Roses. It's none of my business. If he wants to share something with me, that's great. All I know is I have nothing but respect for that band, and I'm glad they're out there doing it because it's a great shot in the arm for all of us rock and roll bands.
No, absolutely. But with that, Steven still is seems to be in a good place, though. And my point being, some people might look at pot as like, okay, you're not sober. But people can also look at it, you're smoking cigarettes, you're not sober, or you're eating bad food for you, you're not sober. So I'm just wondering, is Steven in a, because he's going to be, ramping up to do this Australian tour and a new band that we don't even know about yet. He seems to be, and I guess, if you want to confirm, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. He's in a good place health-wise. Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree with them. They called me on to do this, to do the revamping of Adler's Appetite. I was one of the first calls. Jamie called me, and I politely declined.
Okay.
Because Enuff Z'Nuff has been taken off since I've taken over lead vocal duties, and Tony Fennell joined our band. We've been playing great shows, and we've got a record deal, and we're touring around the country, and I'm fronting the band right now,
yes.
And I'm not smoking pot. And I love smoking. I really do. I love puffing once in a while, but I've curtailed everything. I've sacrificed it because, as my grandfather would say once again, a little discipline never hurt anybody. And I want to be able to remember the words and sing these songs every single night well, so that the experience for the fans is just as strong as it is for our band. So I think Steven's in a good place right now to answer your question, and I don't think he's partying a lot. And I really believe that. The band he's got right now, I can't mention who's in the band, but
sure.
he's got a strong band that he's surrounded himself with, and I think they'll do very well. We did have a chance to go out. Steven had a chance to go out with Live Nations and do a long run with us, and it was a good 3-month tour. And Steven politely declined. It was too long for him, which was sad because boy, it would have been nice for him and I to get out there. I could have went up on stage every night and sat in with the band at a song or two. The fans would have loved it. But I think he just wants to do weekend warrior stuff, and he doesn't want to do clubs. He doesn't want to do anything but arenas and shed gigs, and those are hard to get. They're hard to find. He's going to have to get on a tour where he's opening for a big national act to get that, because we're at a time right now where there's too much product, not enough demand. Bands are already out there. Those festivals are getting taken up real fast and eaten up by all the other bands. Yeah. So unless you're going to take a chance and go out there and play for less money, you're not going to get those big tours. And this Live Nation tour would have been great for Steven, but I don't think he really needs it. I think if he goes out there and plays with his new band, which, like I said, he's surrounded himself with some pretty good guys that people are going to know about when they announce it, I think the fans will be pleasantly surprised. And they'll go out and do this tour, and we'll see how it works out from there. And maybe you'll see him out there again. This will be the start of him where the Guns N' Roses guys see, hey, he's out there, he's playing shows, he's doing real well. The reports have been terrific. He's on a straight and narrow. It's time to pull the string, guys, and let's go out and get Izzy again and Steven and do an Appetite for Destruction tour. I'm speculating right now, but that's the way I look at things because that's the next level for them. Because right now, Guns N' Roses is absolutely terrific. They sound great, better than ever. But I think the fans want to see those 5 cats on stage again.
Yeah, no, right on. And so what was the last contact you had? Like, what was your relationship with Izzy, if you had one? You know, since it was just his birthday yesterday as we're recording this.
Yeah, I wish him a happy birthday. I haven't talked to Izzy since 2007.
Okay.
Guns N' Roses had their 20th anniversary, and they played the Key Club, and we had rehearsals for it with Adler's Appetite, and Duff came down, and Izzy came down. They looked great, and Duff picked up the guitar, and our first song we played together was It's So Easy. Duff was singing. That sounded great, and I remember showing the guys chords. I'm going, yeah, it goes to G. Are you sure, Chip? I go, guys, I've been studying your stuff for the last 6 years playing it. I'm positive. I was actually helping them with their own songs. And that evening, Izzy got on the phone and told the production guy, yeah, keep the bass amp up on stage. So in other words, they were happy with my rehearsal with them, and they were going to let me play with them. So that night we got to the show, and everybody was there. And Gilby showed up there, and Slash was there. The whole Guns N' Roses, everybody was there except for Axl.
It's usually like that, yeah.
And we were so excited. We're going to go up, and the place is completely jam-packed. So much trim in there, you couldn't squeeze a mouse in that place. and we went up on stage, and we opened with It's So Easy, and it was great. And then Duff came up on stage, and we did Paradise City, and we did Welcome to the Jungle, and Izzy. It was me, Izzy, Duff, Steven, and the singer, and Michael Thomas from Faster Pussycat was playing the other guitar.
Cool.
And Slash didn't come up. He stood on the side of the stage and watched. He was beaming, smiling. He was happy. And I heard later on the reason he didn't come up is that he didn't want to piss off Axl on the 20th anniversary, having all the Guns N' Roses up there except a different singer. And I get it, and Slash is a smart guy. But it was a all-around successful evening for everybody. And that's the last time I spoke with Izzy personally. Super charming guy, great storyteller, absolutely love him to death. And I hope that one day those guys can bury the hatchet and get back together because, listen, they wrote some great songs together, and they're timeless, and they're played every single day. And they don't have to get back together, but if they did, they would do it for the fans.
We got to get Enuff Z'Nuff to open up for GNR. They had such an array of opening bands during Not in This Lifetime. You know, a lot of younger acts. So I would like to see, as this continues, I know they have the festival dates this summer, you know, to rekindle, especially someone like you who's been friends with a lot of these guys for decades and seems to be, you know, you are who I thought you were being such a positive person, always doing peace. You know, your symbol is peace, and you bring that. You know, it's very palpable through through the phone. So it's just it's pretty amazing that, you know, like you said before, you know, all these years later in 2018, how you guys are still doing it. You know, GNR is still doing it, you're still doing it, and having success. So it really is a testament to not just your music, but who you are as a person, because you couldn't survive. You know.
I'm definitely blessed. The good Lord works in mysterious ways. You would have told me back in 1984 that I'll have enough stuff still together in 2018. Not that I would question it, but the average life expectancy of any band is 4 or 5 years. So to keep going is really a blessing. And listen, I love to play shows at GNR, and they certainly don't need Enuff Z'Nuff on the bill, but we do a great job. The fans would love it. We warm them up. Absolutely, it'd be great. But I see that Guns N' Roses is going out, and they're bringing out a band from Michigan out here called Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah.
A bunch of young guys that sound like Led Zeppelin. And I see that. That makes me happy that there's bands out there that Guns N' Roses is welcoming with open arms and embracing. And it's good for rock and roll. It's good for every single one of us. I look at it positive. And it's only fitting that Guns N' Roses out there looking at the newer bands out there and giving them a chance and giving them a break. It's going to be good for the Greta Van Fleet, that's for sure, because those young kids are terrific. And I always said that band won't break as a band until you find the lead singer who's 18 years old in a hotel room with a an ounce of cocaine and a couple of hookers. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong here. Guns N' Roses taking you on tour. That's a nice notch in your belt, Luke.
Oh, yeah. I got the same feel when we interviewed Tyler Bryant from Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. You know, another young band I would not have known about, most likely, unless it wasn't for Guns N' Roses. But that's what I like seeing. These classic rocker guys, for lack of a better phrase or whatever, playing music together after all these years. You can kind of imagine everything that they've been through. And now being family guys, not the show, but actually like being a family person. It's just, I don't know. I think that's what brings joy to a lot of fans, and just knowing what everyone has been through, and they're here and they're just giving back, and they're playing not just for the fans, but they seem to be playing for themselves as well, which is great. Yes, the money is nice, but
and they certainly are. In 2010, Enuff Z'Nuff played Donington Download. And we opened for Slash and
sure, yeah,
Miles Kennedy and Conspirators, and they tore the house down. They were absolutely fantastic. They played in the afternoon. There was 90,000 people there. Miles Kennedy, quintessential singer, came out. He brought it. They mixed it up with a lot of the solo stuff, the Slash records, along with some of the Guns N' Roses hits. The fans absolutely loved it. And here they are now, 8 years later. They're going back in the studio, going to do another solo record, I don't want to call it a Slash solo record, because all the guys are contributing. Todd Dammett's in the band, of course.
Sure.
Great singer. And they got a terrific unit, and they're going to stay busy. But I think their focus right now is to make this great record, and then right after that, they'll go out and do the European tour, Guns N' Roses, playing huge places to massive audiences. And then Slash is one of the hardest working guys in rock. He'll go right back out with the Conspirators, and they'll go out and they'll support that record. I think it's great. And Duff, you said Duff is doing a solo record. He might be doing another Loaded record, or maybe he's doing something with AC/DC, because the rumor has it that Axl Rose is going to be singing on the new AC/DC stuff.
Right.
And listen, how many guys do you know out there that can sing a Guns N' Roses and do AC/DC at the same time? That guy he's an alien. What a great singer. Does it as well as anybody. There's a lot of people out there that weren't sure about how they would come off, and he passed with flying colors.
No, I was fortunate enough to see Axl DC at Madison Square Garden, and it just blew me away. I just couldn't. It was my first AC/DC show,
Wow.
And I obviously would have loved to have seen Bon and Brian, but I was not disappointed. I was like, wow, this just breathes new life into this music I've been hearing on the radio and on my albums all these years. This is insanity to me. I guess I'll ask you this. Do you foresee any, because you have your prediction or hope, maybe the five guys will reunite at some point, but do you think there'll ever be new music from these guys ever, or just touring?
I'm sure they probably have discussed it, but why do they need to do that? They got enough of catalog material to go for the next 5 years. They can still keep touring. Those songs are iconic. How many smash hits are in there? They don't need to do another record. They don't. I wouldn't need to do it. I think that nowadays, with the advent of social media and the internet, a band that big really doesn't need to do another record. If they did, it'd be great, because movies, soundtracks, TV shows, commercials, they can license that stuff forever. But those songs are so strong right now. That band is one of a kind. One out of every 5-10 million bands get a chance to be that. Even more than that. How many bands are that big where they can get away with just like doing the catalog? It's such a strong, iconic group that I don't think they really need to do it right now. However, you can't predict what Guns N' Roses is going to do. I'm sure they got plenty of material. Slash is always writing. Axl's got that Chinese Democracy record, very underrated, okay?
I agree.
Some great songs on that album. The production's ridiculous. So strong and great playing on there. That's a crapshoot right there. I'm sure that they've discussed it, but they're not going to talk about it, because none of those guys, they're smart enough to know, unlike me, to not do any interviews at all. Let the music do the talking. That's the most important thing. And if I was as big as Guns N' Roses, I probably wouldn't be doing many interviews as well. But it's nice to talk to the fans, let everybody know what's going on. It's very important. With the advent of social media, you reach millions of people at the click of a button. So anything is possible. Only time will tell, my friends. But if I'm managing the band, I'm saying, guys, let's just continue to keep doing what we're doing. let this choo-choo train keep going on the tracks, because sales have proven to me that we don't need a new record right now, that the music we already have out there is sufficient enough.
Right on. But in the meantime, I love the fact that you're very social. You're active on Twitter. The fact that you were so personable in email and getting back to me and calling my cell. Hey, this is Brandon. I was like, whoa, it's ChipZNuff calling me, as I, of course, let everything off with. So, Chip, I can't thank you enough for your time. So, we have a lot of new things to look forward to. We don't know. We could speculate about GNR, but as you mentioned, possible new solo record, right? And new EnuffZ'Nuff. Like, what do we?
Brand new EnuffZ'Nuff record, Brandon. I'm real excited about it.
Awesome.
Picture David Bowie and the Beatles fighting in an alley, and Cheap Trick coming in and breaking it up. Okay,
I like that.
It's solid as a rock album. We produced it along with a guy named Rob Posen, who works with a lot of punk rock bands. So a real throwback to the 70s. Comes out in August on Frontiers Records. Look for us on tour. We go out in September, and it'll be Jack Russell's Great White, Bullet Boys, EnuffZ'Nuff, and another band to be determined. And we'll be playing House of Blueses and Paramount Theaters. Great venues for 2.5 months, taking it to the streets. And, of course, there'll be some videos we'll be putting out very soon. And we'll be hitting it on social media, EnuffZ'Nuff, Twitter, EnuffZ'Nuff, Facebook. And I'm looking forward to seeing the fans out there. Bring your peace signs and paisleys. It's going to be like an indoor mini Woodstock without the mud.
No, I love it. I love it. You're the only one who can get away with the big glasses and that hat and still look so badass after all these years. You have one of the most iconic looks in rock. I love it. And so I'm assuming when you do go on tour, you'll make stops in New York and Long Island, because I want to see you.
Yeah, it'll be a whole North American tour, and then we might be going back out to Europe at the end of the year. We just came back from Europe. We did Hard Rock Hell and a bunch of shows, but we just played a show last week with Black Star Riders.
Nice.
Really hit it off with those cats. What a great band! And they may take us out with them over in Europe sometime this year. It'll be sometime in the fall. So, just check us out on social media, and you'll see exactly what we're doing. And I can't thank the fans enough from EnuffZ'Nuff that have been following us for years. It means so much to us. The band is on fire right now. Come out and see the live show, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Band's better than ever right now.
I can't wait, and especially because if it's around September, I think we're close. Our birthdays are close. Mine's September 8th. What is yours, the 10th?
September 10th.
Yeah, all right. So I'm September 8th. So when you eventually make it in New York City, we'll have like a belated, since I don't drink, we'll have a belated water together or something like that.
Yeah, we'll share something, okay? That'll be determined later on.
I like that answer. And especially, because you mentioned going over to Europe. I told you, we're on the phone with one of your fans from Europe. We have a ton of listeners all over the world, which I'm really just, blessed to have all through the GNR universe somehow and connect to bands and people like you. And I wasn't going to ask this dumb question, but, maybe I always end everything and start everything awkward. Why not? Diesel Daisy from the UK, he just asks, what happens when chips are simply not enough?
You eat more chips.
Sorry. I guess I had to. I was like, with that obnoxious question. So good job, Diesel. I asked your dumb question. So do you have anything else, Remco, you would like to ask Mr. Z'Nuff?
No, just that he's always welcome in Amsterdam, of course. And the Melkweg is waiting for him, whether it's solo or with EnuffZ'Nuff.
Remco, I appreciate you being on the phone all this time with us, and from the Netherlands. Yeah. We absolutely hail your country, everything, your music, your food, your wine, your women, your red light district. It's all wonderful. Great, love the coffee shops. Shout out to the guys at the Greenhouse and the Bulldog. Great places to go to if anybody gets a chance to go out there. And hopefully we'll get a chance to show up somewhere, maybe at the Melkweg or the Paradiso, and play a show for you. Also want to say thanks to the guys in the UK for all your questions. I really appreciate that. And last but not least, Sweden. Love your wine and women. Hope to come out there sometime this year as well and support the new EnuffZ'Nuff album. God bless you all, and I wish you well.
Thank you so much for taking the time. This is so cool. I hope to, one day, meet you, shake your hand, and share whatever you want to share in the future. And this was just a pleasure. And just keep kicking ass and go enjoy your chicken, which I'm sure is waiting for you.
Oh, I appreciate that, gentlemen. Have a wonderful week and a great year. Okay, may the best thing that happened to you last year be the worst thing that happens to you this year.
I like that. I'm gonna use that, Chip, if that's okay.
You got it, my friend.
Awesome. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon. God bless you guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
So that was something else. I really didn't expect Remco what to get from Chip at the beginning. I know, sometimes when I ask these guys to kind of go over their history and do a kind of an autobiography of themselves, I don't know how many times they've done that throughout their career, but maybe not to my specific audience. He's like, all right, he's kind of just going through it. And then once we started with the GNR stuff, I mean, he really took off with the Jamie Adler's thing, of course, with Steven's feelings. What was your take on that?
There was a lot over there because he mentioned a lot of situation in history, but also the more recent parts where we didn't really know if he'd be in contact with Steven or Jamie, for instance. But he had a pretty clear opinion as well about the thing Jamie did and the comments he made, and of course the phone call he got from Steven from Slash's boss. So that's wow.
Yeah, I feel like he filled in a lot of holes that were missing in parts of stories that we all know. So that's what's ironic and funny, and what I try to do with this podcast. These other characters that may not be, they're related to GNR in some way, but they're not officially in the band like Chip, but are key players in the story of Guns N' Roses, and it's just wow. So I hope to have Chip on again. I'll reach out to him again after the solo record comes out. When the new Enuff Z'Nuff comes out. We'll see what happens with that new solo record. That's just fun because he said it's just funny how we brought that up when he just got a call about it, a few weeks ago. Yeah. So a lot of things just coming full circle, and just a lot to digest. A lot.
Yeah. And his solo album was funny because he started to mention people who played on it or who wrote with him, and he just started the list, and the list went on and on and on, and then he actually forgot Paul McCartney. So, and he didn't even mention Trent Reznor. So that's it's pretty amazing stuff. And then when you look at the Enuff Z'Nuff records, he said, I'm like this huge Cheap Trick fan. Like all those Cheap Trick people who are on his albums and on his who played with him, and he played with them. It's pretty cool. How he talks about it, but I think it's a bit more special than he just he claims it to be.
Yeah, he was very humble. I think like he said, I know we were very successful, but he's still very humble, and he also not in denial. He understands, GNR is what they are, this massive band, and unless you are a fan of that era, you may not know Enuff Z'Nuff. The fact also, I thought it was interesting at the beginning when he's saw their record compared to Appetite. He's like, "Oh, we can compete with this," and you never know what that mindset is like at that time, and just where your lives go after that. So it's just very cool. Very, very happy to have him on the phone, calling from Chicago. Very happy to have you, Remco, from the Netherlands. Nice to have our first official conversation via ChipZNuff, and it's just and that's how it happens. I'm talking to now everybody, all the listeners. I've had, of course, listeners from, I had Ray on, I had from Scotland, I had Sir Kev from Ireland. I want to involve, because I'm just a fan. I just happen to work in radio, who happens to have a podcast. I don't get paid for it. If you want to be a part of this podcast, whether, a future co-host, if you see a certain, a guest announcement. For instance, I believe the next episode is going to be Jack Liu, the first GNR photographer. But if I ever make an announcement and you're such a huge fan, you can always reach out to me and inquire. But in the case of Remco, when you inboxed me some questions, I'm like, you know what? You seem to know a lot more about Chip I think this will be a very cool opportunity, not just for, I guess for you, but for me, and I think for the show and the listeners to kind of, my main focus is to have a cool broadcast. So I think having somebody from the Netherlands on, and you saw how Chip was so, he loves your country, like, and he got a kick out of it, that you were on the phone as well. So that was pretty badass. So.
Of course, he was talking about the quality time in Amsterdam, and we all know what that means.
Oh yeah,
those that were the
smoking a pancake or the red light district.
Everything like that. Yeah.
Everything. I will have to make my way there to taking the agriculture or
It's definitely the windmills and all. You have to visit that.
The windmills. Yeah, we'll use that as code word now, just between us and everyone listening. Windmills. Yeah. So unless you have anything else to share, Remco, this was pretty rad. And thank you for everyone tuning into episode 57 of the AFD show. A lot more to get to. More guests, as I mentioned, Jack and Lou on the way. I'm still back and forth with Roy Orbison Jr., who I know is super busy. He actually, when I wished Izzy a happy birthday, I found... I'm looking for pictures for him, and I saw a very cool cover of him, of Slash and Izzy, and at the top it had like the death of Roy Orbison. So I tagged Junior in there. I'm like, did you ever see this? He retweeted it, and he actually inboxed me with a photo of his young son, I believe, wearing a Guns N' Roses t-shirt, like a onesie for like an infant.
Oh, cool.
So he's a big GNR fan, so I can't wait to talk to Roy in the future. And I have no idea where else this podcast is going to go. Never thought I would do 57 episodes. Never thought I would talk to ChipZNuff. Never thought I would be on the phone with somebody from the Netherlands. So who knows? It's everyone listening that keeps it going and just support. That's how this is going to keep going. So like us on Facebook, facebook.com/The AFD Show, Twitter @The AFD Show. Subscribe and follow and leave a comment on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and of course AlternativeNation.net featured on there as well. So until the next one, well, when will you see it? Well, in the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.